And yeah, everyone, this is Thermites, and this is my redirect and discussion for episode 5 of The Rehearsal. If you want to watch the actual reaction, which you should, please, 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 do not watch this discussion without watching the reaction first. Go to the description, click on the very first link. The reaction is right there. It's the whole thing. It's free. Check that out. Let me know what you think. I mean, genuinely, if you don't want to sit around for the discussion, you can just watch the reaction, but if you do that, please leave me a like, please, leave me a little comment, tell me what you think. I would really appreciate that. Especially since I talk a lot in that reaction, so the discussion for this one's probably going to be pretty short. But yeah, go watch that reaction. Okay, so first of all, I'm wearing a different shirt because I'm a tiny bit under the weather, but I really wanted to watch this episode. It was, no regrets, worth it. It was great. Uh, Partially because of, my condition, and partially also just because of how intense the episode was. I was soaking wet at the end, as if I were, in fact, Adam after his fake swimming lessons, and so had to change the shirt, got something a little more festive on. Usually I like to start at the very start and then, go chronologically, but for this one, because I, stopped right at the very end, I think I should actually start with the end. Because, yeah, I regret not, saying anything specific about the, the ending here. I mean, first of all, pretty obviously, Nathan has thrown himself from the frying pan into the fire. He knew what he was getting into with Angela, in the sense that he clearly understood from the start, okay, so she's, a crazy Christian, quote unquote. I know how to deal with that. I know how to talk about her. I know how to, get a rise out of her. But as he says in this episode, he doesn't really know that much about Judaism. It is a part of his culture, but it's not something he knows a lot about. And so, in this moment, as he is being grilled by, a Zionist, he cannot say one way or another. He can't really make an argument. And so he is just kind of sitting here going how do you feel about the donuts? And meanwhile, she is unrelentingly trying to keep it on the subject, trying to get a word out of him, trying to, get him to the point where he will, promote the state of Israel on this TV show. It is deliciously fun to look at. I should probably state, if I'm going to be dunking on him for this, I should also state my own personal belief. And I'm realizing, as I'm saying this right now out loud, in the time it took for me to change my shirt, I probably should have thought about this. I probably should have put some thought into it, but I mean, I'll shoot from the hip. I'll do a Miriam kind of. I am pro-Palestine, fundamentally, and I do want to say right off the very start, that doesn't mean I'm I am not anti-Semitic or anything. That is a correlation people like to make a lot of the time. But, I'm pro-Palestine, I'm anti the current state of Israel, but I don't dislike the concept of Israel. Stating what I understand, also in case someone wants to correct me on this, but, Israel is a concept. It is the idea of the promised land, which you can find in the Torah or the Bible or whatnot. It is this idea of, a home for the homeless, a sanctuary for the Jewish people who have been persecuted for thousands of years, who have not had a singular land to call their home, who have only been living in the lands of other people, and who have been, who have had a really rough go of it. And I can't dislike that concept, and the concept has nothing wrong with it. Who is against the idea of a home for the homeless, a safe place for those who are unsafe in any other place? The thing I don't like is the current implementation of Israel, which is a relatively new phenomenon, all things considered, which is, a country that was created from the Palestinian lands over the course of, a relatively fast amount of time, just by buying up and colonizing this large swath of area in the Middle East. It is, and even that, you can say what you want about the colonization part of it. The thing that I think, most people would have a problem with is the exclusionary aspect of it, the xenophobia, the taking all these people who used to historically live on this land and relegating them to a tiny strip of land and then bombing that strip of land. slash, making it extremely difficult and, not a thing you would want to do to, legally at this point go to the land that you and your family have lived on for a long, long, long time and making a life for yourself there once more. That is, I think, the fundamental thing that people don't like about, Israel. That doesn't mean that you are anti-Jew or anything. It just means that this specific thing is not great. And I think that's also like, like in this bit here, Miriam tries to bring up some of the great things. Like, like the land itself is beautiful. There have been many great like inventions that have come from Israel. Like that is all true. I'm not saying that's not true. The problem is entirely with, the exclusionary aspect of it. That's what I don't like. Like you can't. It feels really weird to have a promised land that has been stolen, because that's no longer a promise, even if it is a covenant with a higher power. Like a place that should be a blessed land should be given out of goodwill. Otherwise, I feel like it's inherently not blessed. It is the exact opposite. And so, yeah, like, that is my opinion on it. But I absolutely fully understand that were I in this household along with her, either, she would be able to out-debate me, or she would simply say, fuck you, you're an anti-Semite, I'm not going to deal with this. So, like, I'm not saying in this situation I would be better than Nathan. I'm just saying what I personally believe. And we don't know what Nathan personally believes. Like, we're in this weird middle ground area in which he is, simply airing her, like, her opinions. And that can be ambiguous. Like, clearly the framing of this is meant to make you think, oh, she is, she's pushy, she is, like, overpowering him. Slash, it's a thing that Nathan does a lot in this series of having people who, like instead of, confronting someone about their beliefs, he will instead simply allow them to go on and on and on about them, with the idea being that is self-explanatory. There's nothing that could be said more strongly than just allowing them to speak. Like, there's an argument to be made there about, like, at the same time, you are platforming that, but, yeah, I don't want to, like, put words in his mouth or anything. In the same way that you could say that, like, letting her speak is implicitly agreeing with her, you could also say, this is something that's happened to me quite a bit, is, like, if you feel like you are in a situation where someone is, being extremely overpowering and you feel like you don't have control, you can implicitly disagree as well by just not agreeing with them. But also, there's the additional layer, as there always is in the rehearsal, of Nathan is God. Nathan is either the devil or he is God. Like, he rules over the entire production. He could simply erase this entire thing from having happened. He could simply edit it to make her say something she is not saying, which, to be fair, I don't think he has ever done that. Or if he has, he's done it so cleanly that I've never noticed. Assuming no, like, inherent malice or anything, there is still that extra layer of he is the one with power in this situation, even down to the fact that, he hired her to come here and, teach his son and to, like, help with the traditions and all that. He has every right to be able to just simply walk away and drive off, or to tell her, I'm sorry, you're no longer wanted here, I would like you to walk away and drive off. Fundamentally, it's a situation he has full control over, but also, I think as is very apparent in this episode, he doesn't feel like he has that control, and when he uses that control, it is very much to run away from the question being asked, or to run away from the difficult choice. Like, making a statement on big TV about your stance on Israel versus Palestine is a big choice to make. And, like, in the absence of being able to physically run away, or to be able to say, can we just do this again but kinder? To be able to say, to say nothing at all, to just, like, deflect her and then let her say her thing and then cut off to the point where, maybe he agreed or disagreed or something. Like, that is also very much a choice he is making. But yeah, truly was not expecting this. As I said in the episode itself, also, like, I'm actually glad that it didn't flare up to a big old, like, Angela losing her mind, because I guess she never learned about what he was doing with Adam. But it felt so cringe and painful throughout the entire episode to know, like, yeah, you are, like, secretly teaching, your child, which is perfectly within reason, but also Angela's child, this stuff without her knowing, explicitly knowing that she is not going to be okay with this. Like, when if she were to finally hear about this, it would be explosive. It would be extremely upsetting. And we know in this episode, Angela is aware that Nathan is doing stuff just to get a rise out of her. So, like, was he trying to ultimately create that confrontation? Did he want a big blowout moment where he revealed the truth to her, including all the, like, like, I'm teaching your child this and this and this, and this is just the way it is. You can't unteach him, and she would have a big old freak out or something. Like, it adds an extra layer to the point in which she does leave, in that she does what she's been doing this whole time. Like, she is trying to be very calm. She is trying to, like, deflect a little bit from the situation, and in the end, she separates herself. And that is, like, simultaneously, there is that layer of dissatisfaction of, like, oh man, we didn't get to do the thing, we didn't get the climax. But also, I can't be upset at her for that. Like, she understands the situation is not healthy. Even if she didn't say it's unhealthy, at the very least, when she was talking to the later fake Angela, she did bring, she at the very least was neutral in the same way that Nathan was neutral at the end. She wouldn't say one way or another whether she thought this experiment was healthy. Because I think, it was implicitly that, it's not. That she is not getting what she thought she was going to get out of it. Instead, she's been getting, like, she's been having a good time. She's been vibing. It's been pretty okay. But also, like, now that she is being confronted about it, it's no longer comfortable. She doesn't want to have to try and commit to this thing that clearly isn't working anyways. It's a strange feeling. It's a really strange feeling. Not to mention the literal amount of time being used up. Like, in the same way that last episode we brought up how much time and effort these, students of the Fielder method were having to devote to this class and to, like, getting the certification and all that, and to get the job that they're gonna get as a part of this TV show. Like, in the same way, this is an enormous amount of her own life as a human being that she is spending on this show, not, like, doing whatever she does in real life. And that is including, the reset of, we were going to get to 18, we were so close, and then you reverted, and now we're just going to be doing this again? Like, is it going to be the same amount of time? If it was 2 months or so, let's say, between when he was 6 and when he was 18 before, he wasn't even 18 at that point. Is that 2 more months I'm scheduled to be a part of the show? Are we just going to keep on going like that? Like, not to mention the layer of, yeah, I knew this was all being filmed, but also you're confronting me about it with all the camera footage and that. I can understand it. She's not a bad person. She has some beliefs that I really, really, really do not like. And I mean, like, even if I am to say she's not a good person, which I think is okay, at the same time, like, just being a person who does things that I don't like does not require you to then be tortured by Nathan, or to be, a part of this experiment for longer than he said, or to, to put up with the stuff that he is putting you through. Like, this is a very small tangent, please bear with me on it, but very recently, a site called Kiwi Farms was taken down. It's still up on some level, you know how it is, it's the internet. And the way in which I want to describe the site in order to, like, tie it to the show is, it's essentially a site that finds strange people and then catalogs all the bad shit they have ever done, or all the weird things they have ever done, but a lot of bad shit, and then uses that catalog of bad things as ammunition and justification for harassing them, or making bad things happen to them, or like, very much not good things. That is not what I'd say is happening in the show, but that has been making me think about, is that okay? The answer, I feel like, is very much no. Like, you cannot, how do I put this? Like, we cannot know what Angela is really like. What we have is what the show has given us. And even within what the show has given us, it's been mixed. There's a lot of stuff I can say I don't like about her. Whether it is her, like, her Christian evangelical beliefs, whether it is her, like, her propensity to, to specifically Google conspiracy theory shit without looking at the other side. Whether it is, like, the fact that she didn't really buy that much into the simulation. Like, there are plenty of things that generally give me this vibe of, I don't think I like you very much. That doesn't mean that she can then be punished for that. And should, like, all this pressure lead her to do things that are not great, that it also, like, it's still not justification to say, well, you did do this, you keep on doing things I don't like, therefore you should be punished again and again and again. And I don't, to be fair, I think a big part of why this show, despite all the things that make you feel bad or icky or weird, part of the reason why I think this show is still, not something I'm going to drop, not something that I find actually distasteful, is that people can leave. In episode 2, Robin was able to walk out immediately. Angela is now walking out. Even, God damn it, I don't remember his name, but the guy with the girlfriends and the grandpa and all that. He ghosted the show. And I think, I don't know if there's any bad fallout about these people online or anything. I've been, staying away from stuff like that would be inherently spoilers. So I can't say anything about that. I sure hope they're not being harassed. And I do appreciate that they are able to leave, and that is more or less fine. There's still the inherent pressure of, you're on a TV show, this could be a big deal, this could be interesting. You inherently wouldn't want to leave, but so by making the choice of leaving, you're still pushing through a lot, even if Nathan isn't saying outright, you're not allowed to leave. And yeah, just the fact that they can leave, I think, adds a lot to the potential, okayness of the show. The, not moral good, but the lack of evil within the concept. That is the thing that I think, would allow me to say, maybe Nathan's not the devil. There's also the layer of Nathan himself, clearly making himself look bad, but I don't really consider that to be a part of the moral framework of this. Plenty of bad people have said, as they're doing bad things, I'm a bad guy, I'm doing it because I'm bad. That doesn't make you better. Being self-aware about it isn't, a part of that, really. And even if part of this is, the self-torture of Nathan, or the self-analysis, the self-growth, there still are other human beings who are a part of this, who are being affected as a part of this overall giant arc. What is, if Nathan did set up this whole video thing, if the kid, regardless, the kid is an actor, he is being paid in order to do any of this, even if this was his own idea of, I'm gonna be Dr. Farts. Regardless of that, Nathan is still, either in any case, using a child in order to affect Angela because he wants to troll her a little bit. He wants to get a rise out of her. He wants to get a reaction out of her. And to do that, he wants to have this child simulate shitting. I'm still not on Angela's side on the hard, it is satanic, it is evil, this is not a thing that kids should participate in. But I can understand, the subjective feeling of, if she believes a child shouldn't do this, and you having some inkling that she would not like that, made a child do that. It is still upsetting. It is still somewhat offensive. The entire Dr. Fart sequence is so strong, though. I mean, that is truly the big ping pong of, I can moralize all I want, but also it is extremely funny. Yeah, I'm very curious to see where we're going to go now that Angela's not here, because I was actually very excited, with this, even before they brought up the homeschooling thing, when I thought this was essentially homeschooling, and it is, home Sunday schooling in a sense. Just the idea that she would, try to genuinely impart these beliefs on, on her son. The idea that, she would be able to have this chance at, figuring it out. And, she has had, this is still a transformative experience. And, even if she didn't go through the whole thing, it is still interesting. It's still something that must have taught her something about existence, but it's a bit compromised by how fucking weird it was, by how flawed it was, by how modified it was over and over and over again. But at the same time, just being able to, even if it was something you agreed to, even if you kind of knew it was going to happen, still being able to, in last episode, see your child who has been acting out, who you've been trying to discipline properly, have an overdose, that's gotta affect you. That's gotta, hopefully, help her, in a positive way going forward, but, that's not necessarily true. If she didn't have therapy or something after this, then it could still be negative. That could still, really freak her out if she is to have a child that she raises as a Christian, child in the future. If she does go through all of this. I don't know if this experience would make her better or worse. The intended goal is to help her, but this could also have just, given her a bunch of weird trauma and weird, feelings towards things that she would want to then go oh, well, don't teach our son to shit out candy bars or whatever. It might have just loaded up with a bunch of, shit that is just not necessary. in the same way that I keep on criticizing Nathan for focusing on details that don't matter that much, that aren't going to add to the main, Pareto principle, 20% of the work gives you 80% of the results. I feel like, like some of the stuff going here is going to load her up and load up the people who are in the rehearsal in general with a lot of baggage that is, completely separate from any of the good stuff they may have learned, because this is just so shoddily done. It's a rough one. Man, this whole talk with Nathan and his parents, like, I truly want to know, how did he talk to them about this? Was it as simple as, hey, I got a job I'm working on, do you want to come down and have dinner with me? I'll fly you down? Or, like, was it, like, it seems like, they did know that there was going to be some layer of this. Like, they knew that, that Angela and Adam were going to be there, but they didn't know that Nathan was a part of their family units. So, like, were they expecting to just have a dinner with Nathan and also two people who are a part of his TV show right now? Oh, man, I do really love the scene where Nathan's dad is classic dad, just kind of being quiet, just like, yeah, I'm just going to eat my food, it's fine. I appreciate that Nathan's mom is taking this as an actual chance. Like, she, more so than most people in the show, more so than Nathan, understands the idea of this moment, even if this is not the actual thing, this could help you in the future when you are going to deal with the actual thing. Like, there are these multiple layers of, Nathan has very much this intentionality of, this is the thing we are doing. It is this specific thing. I'm not going to really look at the subtext unless I'm doing it in post in order to, like, create a theme for the episode. But in the moment, he seems very laser focused on specific things, on, like, this is the thing we're doing, and then after that we're doing this thing. It's something I can relate to a fair bit. And so, like, his mom being able to just, naturally look at the situation and say, here's something that is an actual character flaw of yours. This is something you could work on in this moment. And even if you're not just working on it, I don't want you to be a pushover. I don't want you to make the same mistake you made in the past. That's just some good momming. Damn. Yeah, I don't know anything about his personal life, so I definitely was not, thinking, like, I have no extra context for how this could possibly, tie into his actual, like, traumas in the past or relationships. It's such a weird mix of him being a pushover and also having all this power. And also, like, having this ability to be undaunted in the face of crazy shit. I think that's it. More so than his power is just the idea that he is simultaneously undaunting and very daunted. Like, he is the kind of person who could straight up tell you, like, hey, if you want more time at the front of the counter with a giant ass line behind you, why don't you just spill your food and then it'll give you more time? And I fully believe he would do that himself. But at the same time, when it comes to shit that really, really affects him, because I can understand that as well, like, as a thing where it's like, well, I don't know these people. I can just do whatever the fuck I want, even if it does humiliate me in front of 90 people. Like, I don't know them. Whereas, like, when it's something that is very affecting, something that touches him personally, he wants to back off. He wants that safety. Again, I am judging him, but also I get it. I've been there. Yeah, fake Angela was so good. Looking at this shot again, I cannot believe that in the moment I was like, that's just Angela. But at the same time, it has to do with her acting. Like, she nailed it. I truly do wonder how many, like, as funny and goofy and as a thing that it is, I truly wonder how many, like, disciples of the Fielder School are going to, like, have really big careers going forward. Because, like, this was masterful. It's the way in which she sits. It's the way in which she talks. It's, the whole aura she gives off. Like, just the vibes are so, they are so Angela. And yet they're not. Like, as I noticed in the episode itself, fake Angela is definitely more meta than real Angela. And I think that's also an interesting thing to note, that you guys have done rehearsals in your own minds, right? Like, before you have to do something, not to the extent that Nathan is, putting shit together physically, but you have had a situation in the past where it's a big monumental thing. Maybe it's an interview, maybe it's a job thing, maybe you're, like, going to propose to the person you love. Like, you have to rehearse that to some degree. And in that, like, the person that you are stimulating in your mind is, like, they are the person in real life, but they're also partially you. They are a puppet. You know, you are metaphorically taking your hand and putting it into a depiction of that person and then making them do what you want. And part of that means that, at least in my own experience, when I try to do that with other people, the talks tend to be tailored towards me. Like, I'm very bad at talking about stuff. I'm very bad at confrontations. And so when I'm devising the way in which the conversation is going to go, I add on this layer of, like, the person I'm talking to gives me an intro or gives me an out. Or if things get difficult, I, summon courage and I say something really strong. And then instead of deflecting or, like, bringing up something else, they go along with what I'm saying. It becomes a Socratic dialogue of sorts. And generally, I feel like it tends to be more intense than the real thing. Like, that, I think, is a big facet of this series. Like, even going back to Korra in episode 1, I feel like that is... I think that honestly illuminates, the ending of that episode so much more for me. That the concept was, like, he was building this up. It is such a... I think I said this during the episode, but bear with me. Like, he was building this up as being something that would completely destroy their entire relationship, that, she could respond violently to this. But ultimately, when she got the information, it wasn't that impactful to her. Like, she thought it was weird. She thought it was strange, sure, but when it came down to it, her actual response was more muted than the simulation. The simulation was based on the her inside of Core. The person who has these strong emotions, the person who is willing to, who would explode. And it's all that she couldn't have exploded. It's just that in the reality of the situation, with, the pressures around, and also just, like, with her being her own person, having her own problems and all that, she just didn't explode. This, like, fake Angela is interesting in that she is not the Angela within Nathan. Like, the simulations, the rehearsals are, by their very nature, because he is using actors, none of the actors can embody what he thinks the person is like. They can only embody what they believe the person is like. And so fake Angela has this layer of, this whole situation's real fucked up. I don't have consent. I have, you have control over me. You are not feeling reality. You are detached. You are not emotional enough. Like, all these things I think are very real responses, but that clearly are not Angela's responses. Angela is more deflecty. Angela is more, like, she has that weird therapist energy I brought up in the reaction. She is willing to just, try and calm you down, talk it down, but also matter-of-factly say her opinion as if it is objective truth. And because she's talked you down, you're more likely to go like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Whereas fake Angela was much more aggressive, much more, like, willing to attack Nathan. I find that really, really fascinating, because ultimately, between the two of them, like, I got more catharsis out of fake Angela than real Angela. In the same way that I think, like, Core got more catharsis out of, fake... I gotta write down all their names at some point. But like, the simulations versus the real thing. The real thing was big and important, and it was the thing that gave him true catharsis. But at the same time, it just, it wasn't quite there. Or even, like, the end of that episode is this big, impactful, emotional thing that happens with fake Core. And Nathan chooses not to talk to real Core about that. But, it's still, like, the reality of it is less satisfying than the fake thing. Even down to the Gold Digger guy, who we don't get to see the actual result of that. We just get to see the crying and the breakdown that he had over the simulation of the events. As someone who loves fiction, this does feel like a very twisted form of that, fiction can be beautiful. Fiction can, make you feel things you would never have felt before. I can never feel what it is like to be, a boy king or the Hokage or, a street fighter who needs to fight his way to the very top of a hierarchy. But at the same time, like, it creates this blurred line of, well, if it is something you can actually experience, then is it, like, on one hand, you are, like, by overanalyzing what the actual experience is going to be, you're kind of robbing yourself of something, of the truth of, the spontaneous thing. But at the same time, you might be opening yourself up to much better versions of what that actually will feel like. You might want the feeling of a drag-out knockout fight, like, That's actually a big one for me. Is there's some situations where like I fully forgive the person, I have found my solace, I have found like everything's been good, but I wish either I could have gotten like a big old final fight with them in order to like fully express myself, or I wish I could have just had a screaming match, or like all sorts of things that paradoxically I would never be able to do, because would the thing if the thing happened, I would then clam up and shut down and not do it. It's just it's so interesting that given that situation, Nathan's so focused on the real situation that he can't really appreciate the rehearsals for what they are, which is so weird considering he came up with the concept. Like the big like knockout drag out fight with Angela or fake Angela later on, like the whole screaming match there, that felt like pure catharsis. That would have been a perfect moment to then yell at her and to say like, well, what do you mean, like how do you feel about this, what is this situation, what did you want to get out of this, like even if I'm a bad person, you also have contributed to this problem. And yet Nathan wants a nicer version of that, and then clearly when he gets to Angela, he didn't already ask those questions. Like by the time he gets to Angela, he's asking the big questions that that he does want answers for. He does want to know, like, why were you why did you feel about this? Like, what do you want out of this? How committed are you to this in a sense? But he doesn't, like he doesn't get the answers he wants, and it doesn't seem like he really asked those questions in the simulation themselves because he's not prepared for the answers. Like it's the exact opposite of the kind of the like the proof of concept of the show, which is when he goes to Cora's house in episode 1, and then we see that he simulated the entire trip to Cora's house beforehand, and it goes off without a hitch. Super snappy, super clean. He's completely lost the ability to do that. Every single time he has a conversation now, like in episode 5, it feels so raw, so like unprepared for. And before it made sense because like this was the simulation. He wasn't simulating the house. But now he is simulating the house and he still can't quite figure it out. It's interesting. Like especially since we're going to be ending this, it seems like, with Nathan just being a single dad with a boy who is an actor. Which means that he should have perfect control over the the very ending of this. Like, if he says, I don't want to eat my vegetables, Nathan could just break the simulation and say, no, you do. Well, listen, I don't want to deal with this one. You like vegetables. And then he could just go, all right, I like vegetables. Here we go. Yum, yum, yum. Love them. Like, it's going to be too comfortable, I think. Like, obviously, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of, like, crazy X factor that fucks it all up. There's also something very worrying about the idea that Nathan's going to try and find catharsis in the final episode using all actors. Like, I feel like he's got to get like a nanny or someone in here in order to create this extra, like this extra conflict that he can then bounce off of. Oh man, I still can't get over this. Like, just again, the fact clearly he didn't prepare to take this kid to the synagogue. It was this, it was an off the cuff shooting from the hip moment, and he fucked it up real bad. I mean, not bad in the sense that it was negative, just bad in the sense of, he wasn't really able to provide what this kid needed. And because of that, like, it is, to be fair, I'm shitting on it because it wasn't a good, like, recreation, but also it does say a lot about Nathan. Like, if this part is Nathan, like, if the person who's supposed to be getting something out of this is Nathan, then it did teach him, okay, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I want this boy to have some Jewish heritage. I want him to be connected to his Jewish culture through me. And so I need to get someone to help with that. But there's also this added layer of, like, what is culture? It's a question that a lot of people have, brought up. Like, if you have, been separated from your homeland for, like many, many generations, there's nothing wrong with going back and trying to reclaim some of that heritage and trying to feel it. But also, you are disconnected from it. Like, you cannot say, I am the same as someone who has been living there their entire life, who has been immersed in that culture, who has been, like, exactly like that. Like, by nature of you living somewhere else, you are part of the culture of that other place. Unless, of course, you do create an enclave situation in which you just don't interact with the area around you. But even then, you are still, you are formed by that enclave, not by the mother location. Not by your own promised land, so to speak. It's a tough one, because I don't want to tell anyone, like, no, you're not allowed to have that. But at the same time, it is that, it is a very personal question. It is a personal decision you have to make of, like, do I want this connection that I theoretically have a claim to? And then if I do have that claim to it, if I do have that connection and I do explore it and, feel fulfilled by it and it means something very important to me, like, what does that mean to other people? Can I then say X or Y or Z about, being a part of that? It's like there is no, like, one suit fits all response to that. Ultimately, like, your own life experience is something you have to craft for yourself. The cultures you immerse in yourself, you have to take, what you can from them, and it is your own personal experience. No one else can say you have been this amount of shaped by this culture. No one can say that but you. And even you, like, in a perfect world, you should spend some time to really analyze that and really figure out what you mean by that. And, you know, if it is something you're not that attached to, or if it's something you do have a very strong attachment to, like, just how to deal with that, how to feel about it. That sounds like a cop out in its own right, but that really is what I believe. Like especially in a situation like this windy sort of, like, I am, I'm part of this family. My wife hates the idea of me teaching my child, Judaism. I really want to pass this along, even if it's not something that I am that immersed in. I still have a right to do this. I still, have a right to, like, pass on this thing that I find extremely important to my child, even if I don't have the natural capability to do so. But at the same time, there's also that added layer of, just because that is not a bad thing to do, does not mean that you can't have bad motivations for it. To dive into Nathan's pure perspective, like, if we do go along with, Angela's mental state, if we do, take her belief that Nathan is, just doing this in order to manipulate her, that he wants this to happen because it would be a funny thing to happen in a TV show, or it would be controversial. I mean, I keep on saying or, but as Nathan says, I believe, to fake Angela. So bad finding clips. He has this really real moment where he says life can be two things at the same time, which I think I should probably say that I do agree with. Like, I don't want to try to make this exclusionary. You can be both, like, a little boy can be Christian and Jewish at the same time, even if there is a conflict there in, which, the beliefs, like, what each belief says the Messiah is. Like, you can still be both. You just have to figure out what that means to you. And no one has a right to say, no, you cannot be both. You can be wrong and right at the same time. It just depends on, like, are you wrong about one thing and right about another? Or are you wrong and right about the same thing? Because that can also be the case. You can absolutely, like, not just be wrong for the right reasons or right for the wrong reasons, but you can also just straight up not know what the fuck you're talking about, but also say something that is true amidst all of that. And that doesn't mean that everything you said is true or false. It just means you said something that was right and wrong at the same time. The entire show is two things at the same time. It is everyone is acting. Even Nathan is acting, but also they're all real people. You can't separate the human being here from the person doing a job, carrying out a role. This boy is genuinely learning about Judaism, even if, we don't know anything about his parents, his actual parents, like the parents of the child actor. But he is still learning about Judaism. He is still being taught by, someone who genuinely wants to teach this child how to be a Jew. He, after this is all over, he might still believe that, he has some connection to Judaism because these important adult figures in his life said, you are a Jewish boy. And if so, like, is that okay? Is that not? It's an eternal question. And in the end, I think it just has to be. It comes down to how it affects you. If you were doing it facetiously, then, there's something to be said negatively about that. If it is something that truly deeply shapes you to your very core, then even if it's not, the squeaky cleanest, nicest way to go about it, it's still a part of you. Yeah, I have very strong feelings about, again, Nathan taking a, like, religiously important person to his house in order to debate his wife, but I talked about that in the discussion itself, and I'm trying not to just restate things over and over and over again. I feel like there's something else to be said about Nate's Lizard Lounge, though. Like, I suppose it has this added layer of, like, Why would you do this instead of going to a real bar? The answer, I guess, A, is just it's a fun novelty to be able to do this. B, I feel like A is honestly probably the strongest one. Is just that this is a funny idea, but also it creates this sense of safety. Like, this is an area where he has total control over. And also, it does employ a bunch of the students that have come over that, can be called on at any point in order to do stuff. Like, they're still doing stuff. They're not just wasting their time sitting around not being paid. Yeah, just the idea that Nathan had this place created, that this is, it's the first place we saw him do a rehearsal in. This is his thesis statement of, this can work, but also it is flawed. And the idea that he can just be here and live here and, that he can enjoy this environment that he had full control over, and he is introducing people who are not a part of it at all, who have not consented to be on a TV show. I mean, maybe they have. Maybe when you come to the bar, you do have to sign a waiver saying, yeah, you might be on the rehearsal. In fact, I think you must, because they're not being blurred out or anything. Like, even if they're not being an active part of a rehearsal, even if they're not being harassed or anything, even if they are treating this as if they're just in a normal-ass bar, it is still taking people who are not paid actors and bringing them into the situation. And that question of, is that okay? Why would you even do that when you don't have to? It's a lot to chew on. I doubt Miriam's gonna stick around for a long time. In the final episode, I feel like Miriam has to stick around, actually. I feel like she's going to be written out because, what a strange dynamic of, I'm an only, parent. I'm a single parent. I'm raising my kid. And also here is this, Jewish tutor who also just hangs out at my house. Maybe he'll still take Adam to her house. Because, I can't think of anything else that is a conflict. And we set her up at the very end with, very clearly, creating a conflict for Nathan. But at the same time, it feels so weird if that's what we're going to end the series on. Is it just going to be an episode of Nathan working himself up to being able to say, hey, please, I want my, my son to be Jewish, but I also don't want you to say all this stuff to him. I don't want you to, impart, I want you to impart your beliefs on him, but not those beliefs, just some of those beliefs. It feels a little messy, yeah. But also, if the cost of the messiness is the fact that, allowing Angela to leave, then it is 100% well worth it. That's really what it comes down to. There's no amount of additional, everything that the show has done has been, 20% of the show has given me 80% of the entertainment value. And of that, I would not try and eke out more entertainment value by forcing Angela to be here, or by, creating an entire episode's worth of stuff by, mining all the stuff they did in the back, or, fudging it, or, any such thing that could make it a cleaner ending. This has been the story arc we've been doing the whole time, we gotta finish it to the very end. I would much rather, Angela be allowed to just leave, even if it makes it messy, if it means that, fundamentally, she doesn't have to be in a situation she's uncomfortable with. Also, we might truly end the series with Core being the only person who got satisfaction out of it. And even then, when he watches episode 1 on HBO, he's going to be hurt by the fact that, he did end up cheating on the whole, on trivia nights. Oh boy, I just feel so conflicted. Oh man. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say. Oh, I guess I'll end it with just the, because I didn't say much about the ending, and I already talked about the Israel-Palestine stuff. Specifically, Miriam bringing up the donuts and saying, yeah, these are, called this in our tradition, but actually these aren't actually what those are. These are just jelly donuts. I have gone through that so many times in my life. That specific flip-flop of, hey, this thing is this thing that, should be relevant to you, whether it's because of religion, whether it's because of, culture or race. And then as a kid, I loved to, have long conversations. I loved to dig down into things. There'd be so many times where I would then ask more about it, and they'd be like, well, actually, that's not really the case. Don't worry, these are just donuts. This isn't actually the thing. I don't want to mislead you on it. I was just using this I just wanted to say the thing. I just had an opportunity to say something to you about your culture or your race or ethnicity or whatever, using this as a an icebreaker. But I didn't really think any further than that. This doesn't actually hold up. That's not a good or a bad necessarily. I find it funny that that's just a thing that people do. I mean, it's a thing I do. Watch the rest of my channel. You can see all the times in which I'm pretty sure in this video, I just had a moment in which I wanted to say something and then I leapfrogged across 5 different points to try and get to the thing. It's just part of the human condition. Well, that is that. Messy ending. But that's the discussion. I will see you at some point for the final episode. Probably not going to do it super duper soon. I want to, get rid of this minor little throat bug before I do it, but I also really want to watch this final episode. I'm so hyped. This is one of the best shows I've seen all year, genuinely. It's so compelling. Yeah, okay. That's that. Bye for now. Yeah. But at the same time, it feels so weird if that's what we're going to end the series on. Like, is it just going to be an episode of Nathan working himself up to being able to say, hey, please, I want my son to be Jewish, but I also don't want you to say all this stuff to him. I don't want you to, impart I want you to impart your beliefs on him, but not those beliefs, just some of those beliefs. It feels a little messy, yeah. But also, I mean, if the cost of the messiness is the fact that allowing Angela to leave, then it is 100% well worth it. That's really what it comes down to. Like, there's no amount of additional, everything that the show has done has been 20% of the show has given me 80% of the entertainment value. And of that, I would not try and eke out more entertainment value by forcing Angela to be here, or by creating an entire episode's worth of stuff by mining all the stuff they did in the back, or fudging it, or any such thing that could make it a cleaner ending. This has been the story arc we've been doing the whole time. We gotta finish it to the very end. I would much rather, Angela be allowed to just leave, even if it makes it messy, if it means that, fundamentally, she doesn't have to be in a situation she's uncomfortable with. Also, we might truly end the series with Core being the only person who got satisfaction out of it. And even then, when he watches episode 1 on HBO, he's going to be hurt by the fact that, he did end up cheating on the whole, on trivia nights. Oh boy, I just feel so conflicted. Oh, man. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say. Oh, I guess I'll end it with just because I didn't say much about the ending, and I already talked about the Israel-Palestine stuff. Specifically, Miriam bringing up the donuts and saying, yeah, these are, called this in our tradition, but actually these aren't actually what those are. These are just jelly donuts. I have gone through that so many times in my life. That specific flip-flop of, hey, this thing is this thing that, should be relevant to you, whether it's because of religion, whether it's because of, culture or race. And then as a kid, I loved to, have long conversations. I loved to dig down into things. There'd be so many times where I would then ask more about it, and they'd be like, well, actually, that's not really the case. Don't worry, these are just donuts. This isn't actually the thing. I don't want to mislead you on it. I was just using this I just wanted to say the thing. I just had an opportunity to say something to you about your culture or your race or ethnicity or whatever, using this as an icebreaker, but I didn't really think any further than that. This doesn't actually hold up. That's not a good or a bad necessarily. I find it funny that that's just a thing that people do. I mean, it's a thing I do. Watch the rest of my channel. You can see all the times in which I'm pretty sure in this video, I just had a moment in which I wanted to say something and then I leapfrogged across 5 different points to try and get to the thing. It's just part of the human condition. Well, that is that. Messy ending. But that's the discussion. I will see you at some point for the final episode. Probably not going to do it super duper soon. I want to, get rid of this minor little throat bug before I do it, but I also really want to watch this final episode. I'm so hyped. This is one of the best shows I've seen all year, genuinely. It's so compelling. Yeah, okay. That's that. Bye for now. Yeah.